Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hi guys, sorry if you can hear construction. It's just gotta happen. Gotta deal with it. Um yeah, short video, Vox, preemptive like. If you've been watching me recently, hello again. If you're new, my name's Connor. Hi, I like to learn about things. But if you've been watching me recently, I have really enjoyed infrastructure and urban planning, or just infrastructure in general, transportation stuff. So let's go. That's why I'm here.
If you imagine a typical American city street and you take away the space that's dedicated to cars, you aren't left with very much. There's some narrow walkways on the side and some bridges in between them, but not much else. Cars dominate cities. Spend some time walking around most cities and you'll find yourself pushed to narrow sidewalks, waiting for crosswalk lights. You'll find cyclists navigating really narrow strips of space.
Americans are used to cars the way that fish are used to water. And that's so ubiquitous in the US that I think most people, it just never occurs to them that it could be otherwise.
Good way of
But
putting
what
it.
if there were a way to change that? To give space back to pedestrians and bicyclists, and to make cities more friendly to life outside of a car? It turns out Barcelona might have a solution.
Ooh,
In 2014, the
love that. Whoa. Jeez, I gotta chill. I feel like a lot of people, this kind of goes for anything. Jeez, that construction sound. But they're all on board, or a lot are on board, until you start to get to it. Like, all right, we gotta do this, and it's like, ooh, wait, that has to happen. Oh, wait, I can't do this anymore. Maybe it's not worth it. Let's just keep it. I think that's a common thing. And so his fish used to water, like Americans are used to, I'm paraphrasing, to cars, I think is a good analogy.
Barcelona might have a solution. In 2014, the city was faced with serious air pollution problems. Barcelona and its 35 surrounding municipalities consistently failed to meet the EU's air quality targets. And studies were showing that air pollution in the region was causing 3,500 premature deaths every year. Traffic in the city also causes severe noise pollution. So the city developed an extensive urban mobility plan with the hope of reducing traffic by 21%. The coolest part of the plan were these things. They call them coolest part of the plan
Barcelona looked beautiful, by the way, from those images.
were these things.
So you can only take left turns, which would leave the other side of the street for walking.
They call them
Superilles.
superias.
Sí, superilles.
That
Superilles.
translates to superblocks. It's this urban design concept intended to minimize the presence of cars in city centers. The word superblock has been used before to describe huge city blocks without any passageways for cars, but that's not what's happening here. So here's how Barcelona's plan works. You take 9 square city blocks and you close off the inside to through traffic, so buses and big freight trucks, or any vehicles that are trying to get from one part of town to the next, have to drive around the perimeter. Inside the super block, the speed limit is kept to 10 kilometers per hour. That translates to just over 6 miles per hour. And curbside parking is replaced by underground parking. And that means you wind up with street space for markets and outdoor games and events.
Within this 9 square block perimeter, you're going to have kind of a pleasant streetscape where people can walk around and mingle and do things without this kind of constant fear of cars around.
The concept is going to be tested out in 5 neighborhoods, but the city has identified 120 possible intersections throughout the region where it could be implemented. So how do we know what the results of this kind of plan would look like? Well, northwest of Barcelona is a city called Vitoria-Gasteiz, which has implemented superblock designs since 2008. In the main superblock at the city center, pedestrian space increased from 45% of the total surface area to 74%. And with so much less traffic, noise levels dropped from 66.5 decibels to 61 decibels.
Yeah, but it made sense in the square blocks, but this isn't square. This is how do they enforce the super block rules with such You know what I mean?
Most impressive of all, there was a 42% reduction in nitrogen oxide emissions and a 38% reduction in particle pollution in the area. And on top of that, business is up.
What you consistently see when people change their streetscapes to prioritize human beings over cars is you don't see any decline in economic activity. You see the opposite. You get more people walking and cycling around more slowly, stopping more often, patronizing businesses more, and that kind of that center of social activity will tend to build on itself.
So here's the question. Could something like this work in an American city?
Barcelona has...
My first thing is that it seems they already have solved is I'm sure there is a certain radius or perimeter. There's a certain radius around which you're making this, semi-car free zone. Is that as long as you make them in their own blocks where people can park somewhat near and then go and walk through, then I think it's fine. But I'm sure if you get to a certain size of no parking and whatnot, that, well, they had underground parking. What am I saying? I don't even know.
Some unique advantages getting started on this plan in that a lot of it was built before cars and a lot of it was built on a simple grid.
The district of Eixample, which is where the superblock plan is based, was designed in 1859 in this repetitive grid structure by this guy, Ildefonso da.
Nice stash.
He basically invented the word for and the study of urbanization when he laid out this grid plan for Barcelona that evenly distributed resources like schools and hospitals. But superblock designers insist that cities don't need a simple grid structure to implement this kind of plan. It can work anywhere. Now, cities in the US have attempted some car minimizing projects like this. The problem is they're usually done in wealthier areas with lots of existing businesses. Zoning policies often require separation of residential areas and commercial areas, but an ideal walkable area would be a mix of the two. On top of that, zoning minimums on parking availability encourage the presence of cars and parking lots, and minimums on street width make for really wide, unwalkable streets. And because of that, walkable districts are basically isolated luxury items in the US. What makes the Barcelona plan different is that they aren't setting aside one fancy neighborhood or town square to make pedestrian friendly. Instead, by proposing superblocks throughout the entire city, they've declared car-free spaces a right for everybody, no matter what part of town they're in.
Maybe this might be overly optimistic, but I think it's sunk in the U.S. that the model whereby every city resident comes with a car and drives a car everywhere is just inherently limited. It limits the growth of your city. It limits the health of your city and the growth of your city. So one way or another, we have to find ways of having a lot of people live close to one another without all of them having cars. Being able to get around and work and play and live and have enjoyable lives without cars.
And today, this is how the American road looks.
Really great video. Vox is great. So two things. One of which I already said, but I want to expand a little bit on it. But so
And today,
when it, hold on, there was a better picture.
Other city, it limits, and that maybe your city of both of your cities, so people and live close to one.
So with the lack of those car-free or semi-car-free, these areas they're talking in the video, and it's all just like this, it feels like it's much more disconnected. That's not the right word. It's much less promoting of being a city, of being, I don't know if social is the word. It's just like you're separated. How do you like interact with people if it's not just on one sidewalk? Whereas in a lot of other places where you won't have these barriers of streets everywhere, or you have to be on guard at all times. And I think that you don't have to have that everywhere, but having it some places, I think would be a really good idea, and that the U.S. should try that. I hope that made sense. Number two is it's just less conducive to like a friendly sort of atmosphere, I think. And the other thing is, I feel like a lot of people who are like, there are actually a good amount who are infrastructure nuts, like infrastructure nerds or transportation nerds, right? And they love thinking about it all the time, and they're like, why don't we do this? But when it comes to normal people, I think it might seem like a good idea, but it's not at the top of their mind. And so when someone says, all right, like you got to do this and this, at some point you're going to lose a lot of people who's like, yeah, I'd like that, but now you don't want to mess with, have to worry about certain changes to your lifestyle that might cause you a little more stress when you're already dealing with other things you deem more important. And in a place like the U.S., I think it's exponentially more difficult because not only do you have that change factor, but we are so used to cars. And so it's a change factor. It's also a big change that I think most people only consider and start getting less enthusiastic when like stuff starts to really need to be settled and talked about, and we move and stuff has to happen, right? And I think some people are like, yeah, oh, I'm on board. Oh, this, yeah, right, okay, I got to go to work. I got my kids. Just, don't take my. I think I can say that without being too pessimistic. Okay, I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. I think it definitely should, but any sort of like 1950s highway act or whatever it was, highway system where the whole country was like, all right, transforming the landscape to make car travel easier. I don't think you can really do that anymore, especially in dense cities. And so more gradual, like Barcelona is doing, where they're doing kind of test blocks, would be a good idea. Again, this is something I'm fascinated in, but I clearly do not know a lot about. So any answering to any of my questions or just telling me if I'm wrong or whatever, I'd appreciate to see down in the comments. Hope you guys are doing well. Construction noises. And I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.